And I just want to drive it forward as hard as I can and really go for a fun, exciting, scary read. And so that's what I've set out to do.
Welcome to our latest Book Reporter Talks to interview, where our guest today is Gilly Macmillan. We are going to be talking to her about her latest novel, The Long Weekend, which is a Book Reporter Bets On selection, as was her last book, The Nanny. Now, the last time we had her come to visit us, we were in New York. It was July. It was really hot. We had to turn off the air conditioner. As a result, we were sweating to death. Then we had to stop talking every time the sirens came by. So this is going to be so much more civilized today, because here we were chatting, it's cooler, and she's in the UK and I'm at my home in New Jersey. So welcome, Gilly. It's so nice to have you back.
Thank you, Carol. It's lovely to be back.
It's like, I just remember that day of sitting in the office, though, and we were chit-chatting about the book. Now, let me just start that this is the book that I really couldn't put down. I was walking around going, I just want to read some more. I was telling the staff, I think I need a 10-minute break so I could just go read some more. So I'm going to start by reading the copy that's on the back of the advanced reading copy of this book, just to get you started. So it's, hi, ladies. Your weekend starts here. I hope you have a great time. I didn't come along because I know I'm not welcome. This is goodbye. I'm going away, but I wouldn't want you to forget me. By the time you read this, I'll have killed one of your husbands. Signed, E. So with that setup, I want you to tell us about The Long Weekend.
So The Long Weekend is the story of, mainly the story of three women, Jane and Ruth and Emily, and they are married to old school friends. And these groups have organized a weekend away in one of the most remote parts of the UK, up in the north, in Northumbria, and they've rented this little barn and it's off grid. Unfortunately, at the last minute, their husbands can't come with them, so the ladies travel up together. Jane and Ruth are good friends already. Emily's a bit of a newcomer to the group because she's much, much younger than them, and she's married the richest guy in the group. So they're hoping to get to know her and kind of put aside their judgments. So they make it all the way up the country and they arrive at Darkfell Barn, and the farmer drops them off there. And when he drives away, they're pretty much disconnected from the world, but that's what they wanted. So they go on into the cottage, the barn, and on the table in the kitchen, there is a bottle of champagne with a letter propped up against it. And they open it, and it's the text that Carol just read out. And the action kicks off from there. They're up in the barn. They don't know what to do. They think they know who wrote the letter, as a friend of theirs who they've sort of wronged. So they start to speculate, and then things start to escalate, and they begin to feel very trapped. And they've all got a reason for thinking, well, is it my husband or is it hers? So things kind of develop that way. It's actually based on a movie called A Letter to Three Wives.
Really? Okay. And you saw this how long ago?
I saw it when I was talking about book ideas with my agent, Helen, who you know well. Mm-hmm. And it's a 1949 movie written and directed by Joseph Mankiewicz. And it's actually based on a book called A Letter to Five Wives. And it's a romantic drama. And these three wives take a day trip on a boat. And just as the boat's leaving, a little messenger boy runs up and gives them a note. And they're stuck on the boat at this point when they're opening his note. And it says, by the time you read this, I'll have run away with one of your husbands. And I just thought, well, how brilliant is that if you made it darker and you made it a setup for a thriller? And I couldn't leave the idea alone. So that's what the book's inspired by.
We're going to make a note of that movie in the notes down below, because that is like, okay, this is where I was just watching this. And then my dark mind went to this other place and said, whoa, I'm just not going to run away. Let me think what I can do. So with the Darkfell Farm, where it sounds so idyllic. I mean, it sounds just like this fabulous place. But once again, we've got this locked room set up. There's no internet. There's no phone service. What do you like about the setting like that? Because it immediately sets up, no matter how beautiful it is, it's super creepy.
I think I love the fact that they can only talk to one another and they've all got the same thing on their mind. So they can't call a friend and say, what do you think about this? They can't call the police. They can't call their sister and say, can you go home and see if my husband's alive? They can only speculate, and all three of them have got the same thing on their mind. And I think that's what really attracted me to the idea. And also the fact that there's no body there. There's no murder that takes place in that spot. There's just speculation. And I loved the idea of that.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, what could we have? And of course, we roll in the storm, and you feel the lightning and the rain, and two of them decide that they're going to travel back down to this farmhouse, which they have no idea of how to get to. And I just love that too, because it's like, we must get to civilization. Like, we must leave, because if we get there, we will have the answer. Not that they're necessarily going to have it, but it's like, we have to go there. It's like, we can't wait to see what happens.
Yes, and this is a treacherous place. This is a place where there's marshland. It's one of the few dark sky areas in the UK. So when it's dark, it's super, super dark. So it's very, very dangerous. And the weather whips in. It's right up on the border with Scotland. So there's weather, and it comes in fast and it changes quickly. So there's real peril for them there.
Mm-hmm. And two go, and the other one just stays back drinking. So it's like, everybody's got their vices. Everybody's got this.
Yeah.
I love, there's a bottle of champagne with a note, and I'm going to have to print it. You're going to have to pronounce the name of the champagne, because I'm going to totally blow it. But I never knew that first word translates to widow before.
Oh, yes. So it's Veuve Clicquot, and that means the widow Clicquot. And it's a champagne house that she started. I mean, you have to look up the proper story, but I think her husband left her with it, and she made it happen. And it wasn't until quite recently that I found out what it meant.
Yeah, but I just sat there and I have to say, I was doing Google Translate this morning, because I was like, wait a second, how did I miss this in the book? And I've got to bring this up, because as everyone hands people that bottle of the champagne that I cannot pronounce, you'll now sit there and go, here's the widow in your hands, sending you the widow, here you go.
Well, that's how I found out that it was Widow Clicquot, because it was given to somebody who'd lost her husband that I know. And it was extremely upsetting to them. And the gifter was extremely upset because they hadn't realized. It was one of those real social faux pas. So none of us have forgotten that since.
No, oh my gosh, that would be so hard. Here you go. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Really? Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
So you've got this whole ensemble of characters, and we've got these, couples, and we'll talk about some other characters as well. What character came to you first? Because there's always one that's like, I think I've got her, or I think I've got him.
I think it was one of the women called Jane. And Jane really interests me. She has a past in the army. She's not what you'd think of as a sort of very clubbable wife. She doesn't necessarily want to go out and do girly things. She's very devoted to her husband. She met him in the army. And she's a bit more kind of go-getty than the other. She's not as fazed by being outside. She understands risk. She's perhaps the one who kind of takes the most initiative in a sensible way when all of this happens to them. So I loved her right from the off. Then I thought of Ruth, who's a doctor. She's a general practitioner. But it's not easy. She's got a baby. She's overworked. Her husband is absolutely useless at supporting her. He's an academic, so he lives in his head. And then a bit, and again, this was inspired by the movie, we have the younger wife with the older rich husband, and that is Emily. And I felt that was too rich an opportunity to miss, to throw in somebody who the others might think is a gold digger.
Yeah, this is exactly. And then we've got Edie, whose husband has died. So she's not there. The champagne is from her. And it's all of a sudden now, her husband passed away, and she just doesn't think she could cope with the weekend. So she's not going to go.
That's right. Edie is left out. There used to be 4 couples who did everything together, 4 men who were friends at school and their partners, Edie being one of them. And she's not there. It's the first time. She feels rejected. She's alone. She has a daughter to bring up. She wanted to be invited,
Yeah, and they just didn't want to do that. So each of the characters you're getting to know, because each of them has some things about them that are, let's say things that could make them vulnerable at any single moment. And they're either overwhelmed. I mean, even Jane, who's so strong, is there for a reason. And she's got something that she wants to do, a mission she wants to do with her husband while she's there. So we get to unpeel all these layers of these people and find out who they really are, and the kind of boss kind of feeling that they have going up in the car of, you don't know how to drive, you don't really know me, da, 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 da. All that little quibbling stuff is all of a sudden now we're up on survival. And besides survival, it's then what's going to happen here. And do we really know these people who dropped us off? Like, there are a lot of things that are going on in their heads.
Yeah, and I really wanted to unpeel their marriages a little bit, because I think every marriage is unique and everybody has different dynamics within their marriage, and that fascinates me. It absolutely fascinates me. So that was something I wanted to unpeel with that. And yes, how they coped when they thought it was a regular girls' weekend, with a little bit of sort of interior bitching and a little bit of hopefulness and a little bit of insecurity, things that probably many of us carry to a girls' weekend, especially if we don't know the others. And then when they hit crisis, they're afraid of everything, the place, themselves. Jane is struggling with her past in the army. She's seen some stuff she can't forget, so she's not rock solid. And there's this couple who own the place and they live down the hill in this farmhouse, and they are not perhaps reliable either. So it's not just danger for their husbands, they feel in danger in the moment.
Well, it was also interesting how the package came up, like how it came to them, is the people who drove them up there, a motorcyclist just brings the package and stops them on the road and says, you must handle this, and their instructions on what they should do. So it's very clear that it could be a fabulous thing. Oh, I want to go surprise somebody. I want to go to this, that, the other thing. So they don't give a thought to what they've done when they've dropped this off. So you realize that they're kind of co-conspirators in a lot of ways, because they dropped it off and it's like, well, where did it come from? Would you have any details? But by the time they see this, those people are gone. So it's, you can't even go have that kind of questioning to them of where did this come from?
Yeah, no, and I think the couple the farming couple who take it up there, they just think, oh, it's another set of guests from down south. They're city folk, they're spoiled. So of course they think it's just some silly present, they don't question it at all.
No, and they also, all they want to do is get the linens on the bed. And then when the weather's coming in, and she says, the wife says, we surely could cancel this weekend. We shouldn't really have people up there, but they need the money. And as a result, they're just going to continue it because they need the money. So with all these characters, did you actually sketch them out in advance, like on paper, so that this is the qualities of so-and-so? Because I always feel like keeping the kind of people straight is like, Jane will have this characteristic, Ruth will have this characteristic, and not let them cross over.
I had it in my head for those three. I don't tend to make character notes. What I tend to do is really drill down into each one on subsequent drafts. So I'll write a first draft, which is super messy, and then I'll do a pass for each character. And that's where I really try and make sure they're distinct and that they have their own sort of stuff going on. And that's the moment when you try and make sure there's no crossover there.
Yeah, no, nothing like going on with that. So you're looking at these longtime friendships that were started many times with the university, and it leans a lot that these people have history with each other, good and bad. Like, it's good and bad of what they know of what's going on. So then Emily, we've got, is married to this much older man, you say the wealthiest one in the group, and she feels like an outsider and also an observer, because she's watching these people at the same time, because she doesn't know them quite as well. So for her as a character, it becomes interesting. She's younger. She's more vulnerable in a lot of ways because she doesn't have any security of knowing these people before. So when you were drawing her, were you trying to bring out all that kind of an insecure feeling? Because she certainly has it.
Yeah, I really was. And I'm glad that's come across. I think she's just not in the same space as them. That gap in age, Jane doesn't have kids, but she's had her army experience. Ruth is grappling with that, small children career, sort of classic thing that many women face. And Emily's, she just got off a plane from the south of France with Paul, and, she knows that people judge her, even the air hostess judged her, and so she's got all of that insecurity. But yes, you're right. She's also got that observer's quality where she looks at the others and goes, well, I don't know if I want to be like that. That doesn't look like so much fun. So she's watching. Yeah, it's a funny mixture.
It's just like the kid in the back seat looking up and going, who are these two people? And why do I have to spend the weekend with them? And Paul's going to owe me for this. Like, for this weekend, I need a payback,
Yeah.
when she starts heading down the mountain and like one thing after another happens to her, and you're just there like, honey, you're so doomed for taking this path. But we keep cutting back to her, like we're watching other things, and then we cut back to her heading down the mountain in more and more trouble as she moves. And she does the ultimate bad thing, which is drop the phone in the water.
Yes, she does.
Like,
yes, she does. Poor Emily. Yeah.
but Emily made me realize something. I think I put it in the newsletter on Friday that I am going to memorize my family's phone numbers, because
Yes.
Emily has no idea how to call her husband. She has no
She doesn't.
idea what the phone number is to call them. And I just sat there thinking, okay, I think I know 2 out of 3 in my family. I think I know my parents, but beyond that, I'm not sure I know everybody.
I had the exact same thing. I was thinking, how do I put her in more peril? You know, she's lost her phone, but surely she'd just call them when she got to the farmhouse. And I thought, well, I wouldn't be able to do that, you know? I'd be like, oh, 7.
Well, we have one son who, whenever he goes to a food store, he's the one that puts his phone number in. So literally we know his because we have to drop it in. Like he's, whatever store we've been to, he's already been there. So we're like, okay, we'll just use his number, you know? So that's the reason we really know his. But we joke a lot because people, especially young people, do not know anybody's phone number. It's just dial this. And it's, but so when you did that, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I wrote that in the newsletter last Friday. It's like, whose number do I not know? Because I need to go write these down.
Yeah.
And when you read this book, you're going to get why. You'll be memorizing too. You too will be doing this, you know? So, and I also love that Emily assumed that the present was from her husband, Paul. Like, of course.
Yeah. Paul is very rich, and Paul makes lovely gestures. And so when she saw it, you know, her feelings about the weekend softened, and she thought, oh, okay, I might be able to make it through tonight if Paul's done something nice.
And I also love that she opens it and she's like, wait, this is not addressed to me. And look what I just opened, because that's the note that I read at the beginning. And this poor girl is now standing there going, okay, now what did I just do? And I feel like she might have the thing of, let me put it back in the envelope and let somebody else open it. It'd be their husband. Like, it's not going to be mine. He's like,
I think that's absolutely sums up her character. She doesn't want any of this. She's already uneasy. And this is just a turn for very much the worst.
I think that if they make a movie, they should just have her put it back in the envelope and put it on the table. Just sit there like, and then somebody else happens like, really? That's what happened? Because it's totally perfect. So then you up the stakes with an older child in the scheme of things with Imogene. And so she's this teenager and she's at music camp and she doesn't want to be there and she wants to be picked up and and she is just in a mood. And was she always the age you had? Because it's the perfect like teen age. It's like they're on that cusp of going away to school for college or for university or whatever. But right now it's just, I want my way and I want it now.
Yes. Yes. And of course she's lost her father. Her father is Rob, who is the friend that died. So she is not just, I want my way and I want it now. She's got people going, we're here to give you your way because you are grieving and we all loved your father as well. So she's got extra power, but also extra vulnerability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but and she's got a friend that wants her to go to a party, which is so totally teen, like I'm going to go out. And it's like, I don't know if I want you to go out. So it's all that push and pull that's going on, really like just ramps up in a couple of pages of just like, you know, this is what's going on. And then we got the baby whose mother's not coping. So beyond the husbands, there's a lot to worry about because there's this baby and the woman's, Ruth is really not connecting with him. She's drinking a lot. She's drinking a lot of vodka. Actually, when she started drinking, I was wondering how much she brought with her because she downed that bottle so quickly. I'm like, does she have backup with her or is she going down to that champagne? You know,
I think she's going to hit anything she can. Poor Ruth's in pieces. She just can't. She's stopped being able to function without drinking through it, even as a doctor. And that's on the line. People have begun to notice at work, and she's the only person who knows that. So she's really struggling.
Mm-hmm. And she's struggling to get the baby. She knows is someplace that's like safe with her mother. She thinks that's all fine. She's not worried about the baby at all. No. She's worried about herself. She's worried about her marriage. And there's questions from each of these women about their marriages. There's just questions. They're all like, you know, filtering into this. And it's going to be my husband, but this, but that, or how could it happen? And why does Edie hate him so much? Yeah. So there's really no resting on these pages. And I take it that was very deliberate. Like, did you sit there and go, whoa, they're too calm. Let me put something else on the page.
I think I wanted to Yeah, I was saying to you before we start recording, it's my pandemic book, and I think I lost my mind a little bit, the way perhaps many of us did. And I just thought, I want pace in this one. This is a terrific setup with the letter, and I just want to drive it forward as hard as I can and really go for a fun, exciting, scary read. And so that's what I'd set out to do.
Yeah, and it was feeling like I was reading a Ruth Ware book, like one of those ones where it's boom, 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 boom. What happened now? Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, my head is swifting. That was it. You did it, completely. The other thing
you.
you've got set up is they're in and out of each other's lives. So they all have keys to each other's houses, which makes things a really, really easy in a lot of ways, because you don't know who's in each house at each time. You don't know what's going on. So there's one narrator that is written in the first tense, and you really don't know who this person is, but it gives you lots of levity, because it's not like an agency, because how are you going to get in the house? Oh, we all have keys to each other's houses.
Yeah.
We're used to being in and out of each other's houses.
Yeah.
So does that make you be able to be more clever with the characters, because you don't have to figure the way in and the way out?
I think it helped that they were so tight-knit, and they'd had so much history. And I think it adds to the intrigue as well, because they all know too much about each other at the same time as not knowing quite enough about each other in the present day. And I think, yes, it did. It gave me a lot of fun, because what one of them does, it could have been done by somebody else. And they, you can play with that a little bit, a bit of, it gives you a bit of agency to have a little fun with the plot, and to kind of ramp things up, and to really have characters spend time with each other in different ways in different places. And I enjoyed that hugely. It did fry my brain a little bit, so I hope readers will be able to unpick
and what
that.
I also felt like is, if you go into somebody's house for the first time, like I'm seeing a staircase behind you, was that go through the first floor you'd have to learn your way around the house.
Yes.
And you didn't have to do that for any of these people. So whoever got into any of the houses, they're able to do things that you normally wouldn't be able to do, because they can get through the houses themselves.
Yeah.
And
they
can
know
find
where
their
the
way
tea
around.
is they know where the tea is in the kitchen, and where the bathroom is, and they know everything. Yeah, that's right.
And it made it like, if somebody was creeping around the house in a way that they shouldn't, okay, if someone breaks into your house, something happens that they don't really know their way around, and they may stumble, or they may not know the squeaky floorboard, or they may not know this. But here, these people were comfortable enough that even the squeaky floorboard wouldn't have mattered, because we knew our way around the house. So I feel like that kind of thing was eliminated of, I don't know where I am. They totally knew where they were, wherever they were moving throughout these houses.
Yeah, and it's this I just love that, because it's like this extended friendship thing, and they're almost like a dysfunctional family, this group of people. And they're so relaxed about one another until they're not.
Well, and also the women, to a large degree, know that all the men were in love with Edie. They all know that each of their husbands had a thing for her. And granted, she married Rob, but that didn't change anything. They all had a thing for her. And they know that she was sort of like the queen bee, and the other women were never up to that kind of standard and stuff like that. So there is this feeling of her not being there, and of her being evil, that they're sort of understanding of what would she do and which one would it be, knowing our history.
Yeah, and she of course was at school with the men, so her status has always been higher. She's known them for longer. She owns a room when she's in it. She's very beautiful. She was the one they probably all wanted to marry, but Rob got her. Her power, even though we don't see her in the house with the women, her power is extensive. It's like tentacles into all their lives.
Her power is her memory, the memory of her, and memory was going on. And it's not thinking right now, okay, so normally you'd be thinking the poor widow, but immediately that's out of it just by the note that's been written. And it's like, what has she done? And I think that there were a lot of times in their relationships with her, they're like, what did she do? Because they know, like, what did she do in the past with my husband? She slept with my husband before. Did she have a relationship with my husband? What ended up happening in the past? And they've all got, I think, that drilling through their heads of, who was she?
They do. That's absolutely right. Who was she? How much power did she have? How much did she exercise that power? What don't I know?
Yeah, it's like, ooh. But then let's turn to the couple who owns the farm, because we've got John and Maggie. And
Yeah.
John was recently learned that he has early onset dementia, and he really should not be driving. He should not be driving them up the hill. He shouldn't be really off by himself at all, because there's a chance that something can happen. So what worked for the story by having him have that condition, because all of a sudden he becomes somebody who's they can't rely on. They can't rely on going down and getting him for help. And Maggie's in this terrible position of knowing these people are up there, knowing there's this big storm, not knowing what they're all fearing, but by the same token, she's worried about him.
Yeah, she is worried about him. And he has a very ambivalent view of the guests. He loves his wife very much. He understands her point that they need the money. They're running a huge sheep farm. They've been doing it all their lives, but with his diagnosis, it's not going to last for long. Their son is a police officer, so he doesn't want to take over the farm. And John feels an intense connection to this land. It's always been in his family. And it's an almost kind of spiritual connection to it. He believes it should be nurtured and protected. And he doesn't like guests. He doesn't think they respect or understand it. So there's that tension as well, not just the harm he might do to himself, but the feelings he might have about the people who are staying there, and what's he capable of. So Maggie has all this on her plate, but at the same time she's juggling a man who still has an enormous amount of pride, and he's been a really good man. So she doesn't want to say, you can't leave the house, you can't drive the Land Rover, because then you admit that your life is broken, the life as you've known it is broken. And so she's struggling with all of that.
And it's a new diagnosis. It's something new that's going on. So all of a sudden, she's got a doctor saying that morning he shouldn't be driving anymore. And he's driving home, and this motorcycle stops in the road and hands him this package. And she's just completely out of sorts then. She's got to make these people happy because we need the money. She's got to keep him safe. And there's just a lot going on when you've just had a moment like that morning. Like, it's not like it's old news. It's pretty new news.
Yeah, absolutely. Really new news. And she's trying to process it. And so is he with his, especially in a more limited capacity. And it just broke my heart writing their story. I felt for them so much. And I loved their connection to the land, but I also was interested in how that could go wrong.
And if they're younger, then you would think it's that Louis' form of dementia, which happens a lot younger. It's a very early onset. I know somebody whose sister had it, and it was just so difficult because all of a sudden she starts losing everything, and she's in her 50s. I mean, it's not like she's that old. And all of a sudden it's, what's happening here? And are you safe? And are you not safe? And often where they live is not something like they go to the doctor every 20 minutes. Going to the doctor for them was a trip. It was a trip to go do that. So to hear this, it may have been that she's seeing these things for a long time before they went to the doctor. And now she's thinking everything that's happened over the last months. That's the way I was feeling it,
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. She's having to process things that she maybe slightly turned a blind eye to, or thought, oh, he's being forgetful, or he's being this, or that's not like him. And now it all, of course, it adds up, boom, 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 and culminates in this devastating diagnosis. Yeah.
And it's like, where are we going to go from? What are we going to do? So at the same time, she's thinking, he's not going to be able to undo the farm, any of these things that we have to do. And it's sort of like that rush of things that just all go through your head of what's going on. And then we've got these people up on the mountain, and it's one. So there are more than a few twists. There's more than a few twists. And I dare say that no one's going to see the first one. And did that one have you from the start, or did you add that later?
That was the one where I thought, oh, I have the book now.
Yes.
I was writing and I was thinking around the story, and I had this set up from the film that inspired me. And then I just thought, oh, okay, that's the book.
Yep.
So, yeah.
And you can tell because it's very confident writing. If I can say that. There's sometimes you feel like an author tiptoed into what they did in a place, and they were not completely sure about it. This is completely sure that this was going to be working. And you felt that way going in, that it was written with great confidence. And sometimes a twist is not written with that much confidence. And I can tell it's just like a little tiptoe kind of a thing.
Thank you. That's very nice to hear. I tried to make it land because these things have to land. So yeah.
It landed. Now, did you know the ending right from the beginning?
No, I never do. I have a general idea of who I want to emerge relatively unscathed, because nobody's unscathed in a story like this. So I know who my favorites are, But I don't know the detail. I don't know much more than that. I sort of figure it out as I go along.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I have a favorite. They're going to survive, but beyond that, everybody's
Good luck,
game.
everybody else. Yeah.
Everybody's game. So you've said you do this messy first draft. So, okay. So first of all, I know at the end you were talking about Helen Heller, who I know is your agent, and you two brainstormed a lot about this over Zoom, which I think is sometimes it's better than going over lunch. I've got to tell you. I mean, lunch is great, but you know what? You can take better notes over Zoom. You really, truly can.
Yeah.
You really, truly can. Yeah. So did you guys like etch out, okay, this is what I think I'm going to do. You get started, write like messy draft, and then do you show it to somebody, or do you just go, let me get a little bit tighter?
I write as much as I can without showing anybody. The point I have to, if I had it my way, I'd write 6 drafts and take 6 years to perfect, because I'm a total perfectionist. But when you write a book a year, that just can't happen. So I'll write as far as I can. I will rewrite because my first drafts are pretty unreadable. They're just too sketchy. And then Helen will be my first reader always, and we will work on the manuscript, and then it'll go to my editors in New York and London simultaneously, and they will read it and confer with one another and feed back to me their notes together, which is very helpful.
Oh, that's really helpful. So it's not like you're getting one set of notes from here and one set of notes from here.
That would drive me crazy.
Now, I talked to an author a couple of weeks ago, and she said she got notes from an author and 2 different editors, and there were 3 different sets of comments. And she's now where do I go? Like and some things were in direct opposition to each other, and it makes it really difficult to edit from there. Then you sit there and go, do I have anything? Do I have anything? Or do you all like to write the book with me? You know?
Yeah. I couldn't do that. I think my head is fried enough by the end of the book, and you know, it's very, my process is, it works because I get Helen and then I get them, and that their notes will also be discussed with Helen. So by the end, we're all 4 of us working more or less on the same page, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
I'd lose my sanity otherwise.
So doing a book a year. So, okay, if you're doing a book a year, does this, okay, you write messy draft for 2 months. Like, how does the process work? Like, are you already finished with next book?
No, well, here's where I'm probably not going to do a book a year going forward. It'll probably be a book every 18 months because it's hard. And I think I'm going to write better books if I have a smidge extra time. So I don't write that quickly on a first draft. I'll probably take 4 or 5 months on it. And that's only if I can hit the ground running. Often I have to restart. And then a second draft will be quite quick, and edits will probably be 4 to 6 weeks. Because once I have it, I'm quite a quick editor if the notes are concise. But yeah, that's still tight when you're publicizing and then going through a proof and copy edit process afterwards. So yeah, I found it tight.
I think it's too tight. And I've seen a lot of quality go down on books when it is that book a year. And it's sometimes when there's 2 years in between, 18 months to 2 years, it's a better product comes out. I think that some of the product that came out during the pandemic was not as great as it could have been, because I think that people were so stressed that they were stressed about what was going on in their life and stressed on a deadline. And I saw a lot of stuff that just wasn't as great from people I really, really love. And I think that book a year kind of a thing, when you also are doing very different publicity these days. The social media happens all year. I mean, the cycle of that is all year. So you automatically have X number of minutes, hours, days taken away from you just for doing that. And then when the book comes out, the things to do, and even if you're not traveling now and you're doing Zooms, you're doing this, that, the other thing, there's weeks of doing this, weeks of talking about this book, while you're really usually deeply involved in the next one or in edits of it or something like that. And there were times where people said they practically had to reread their book to be able, because they're so deep in the next one. It's like, what were the characters' names? You know, really? Oh, that was the character.
I once forgot a character on live radio, and thankfully the interviewer fed me enough information that it came back before I had to admit that I didn't know who he was talking about. But because I'd written it too far before, and I was in the heads of my new characters, so you sort of wipe your brain of the last book.
Well, you almost have to, because if you're going to come up with new twists or new perils for them to go through or whatever, you almost have to sit there and put that book aside. Either that or you're writing the same book over and over, and that's not what you're aiming to do. So there's got to be a new inspiration and where to go from there. And I have to tell you, I think that I was going to say, this is your 7th book, and has the process changed? And it's like, I want to go to 18 months, I
Yes,
want to move on
exactly.
to a different schedule.
And it's interesting you talk about quality, because, there's a lot of things you can moan about when you're on a book a year schedule, but the thing that matters to me most is writing a good book. And that's why Helen and I have sort of agreed this with my editors, because I'm afraid I won't write good enough books if I keep pushing to do one a year. It's that simple.
Yeah. It's just not the idea, it's the development, the idea. And it's also having time for outside inspiration. And
Yes.
People joke, because I watch a lot of television. I mean, I don't sleep a lot. I'm one of the people that once our newsletter goes out on Friday night, I could watch something till 2:30 in the morning, and I'm not going to be reading a book because I've had this really crazy week. And I'll watch my husband doesn't even watch things with me anymore. My son doesn't watch things. He said, we started to watch 24, and all of a sudden, you were 8 hours in, and we were on hour 2, and you ruined it for watching series with you. And my husband doesn't watch episodes anyway, but you'll find that it'll take your brain out of someplace. And like you're saying, you're watching that movie and you're coming up with some kind of inspiration. And I think that sometimes if you're on this schedule, you don't sit back and think. And the only thing I miss about anything is flights to California, and flights to California pre-Wi-Fi, because flights to California pre-Wi-Fi meant you had 5 hours to just sit and think, and nobody could find you. Yep. You didn't have to answer anything from the plane. You didn't have to do anything. I also remember flying back from the UK one time and just thinking it was great. I watched 2.5 movies on the way back. Yeah. And we were landing, and I was like, please don't land. I need the end in a circle. Please just circle. And we have so few of those across the country, across the ocean moments anymore, where we're not connected. And it's very hard to disconnect when you're in any kind of a business where you are supposed to be connected all the time. So does that make sense?
Totally agree, Carol. Absolute total sense. It's like a description of my life. I'm forever trying to find ways to clear my head and kind of process ideas and process the craft, the structure of books, interesting ways to tell, twists, that kind of thing. It all needs space and quiet. And quiet is hard to find.
Every once in a while, but you're in my car, because I go limited places these days, but I'll be coming home from someplace, like going to get a massage, going to get my hair cut, a few places I go, the grocery store, and I'll have some great music on in the car. And I'm like, you know what? I'd like to drive to Colorado today. I just would like to keep driving, because it's like I'm in my little bubble and I can just sit and think, because sometimes your best ideas come when you're not on the, what I call the little, mouse, kind of thing. Yeah. And
I think
weekends do that sometimes, but not always. But go ahead.
I think I agree. And it's interesting, we're mentioning travel a lot. And I think when your brain's engaged in moving or doing, often if I'm gardening, I'll start to process quietly what I'm doing, but I have to be, or doing a jigsaw or something that keeps your brain alert, but takes it off, as you say, communicating, or the act of writing, which can be a bit tense sometimes. And that's the space that's hard to find, isn't it? It's that precise thing when you can't be reached.
Right. It's like,
I can't do that in the home very easily.
No, I don't either. It's like the phone is always in the room with me, either that or it's going to ring on the other end of the house and I'm never going to make it there in time, but it's always with me. There are times that I don't check mail for hours, but that's very rarely too. If I just see what's coming in. These days, you're looking at the news, you're looking at what's going on, you're looking at what's happening. And it's not just what's happening in the Ukraine, which is just horrible, but you're looking at what's happening in the tech sector. You're looking at what's happening for us in Washington. You're looking at, and I also try to look at so many different voices and different points of view that I've now taken to doing this really crazy thing that I get up in the morning, I read email on the exercise bike for an hour, because I am never going to get another minute to myself, once the day starts. And it's really been interesting, because this morning I was writing for 1 hour and 15 minutes before I realized what I was doing. And it's funny because I have the Peloton app and I feel like I should put it on just so that they know I'm riding. Even though I'm not doing their ride. And I have done that. I've just put it on my next to me. But I feel like you have to find time to do the two things that, if it's an exercise thing you want to do, because if not, you're at the end of the day and go, I didn't again. I didn't again.
Yes. Yeah, it's a battle. It's a battle. And I think all of our attention spans have been shortened horribly by social media and all of that. And, you know, I get up in the morning, I read 3 different news sources before I've even gone downstairs to feed the dog and have a cup of tea. And even when I say to myself, what are you doing? You could be reading a novel. You know, you have this terrific novel you're reading. I can't, I'm on it. I can't stop reading. I'm through 3 or 4 articles before I've even, you know, woken up properly. And I'm sure that's not good for me.
No, but by the same token, I also like to read the entertainment news. I like to read what people are making. I like to hear what people are doing. I get those deadline alerts all day long of just to see what movies are being made, who's starring in what books have been picked up. And being picked up and something happening are 2 different things, but like, you know, what's further along. And I just find that that the knowledge base needs to be much different than it was before, because let's face it, when I was little, you turned on, there were like 4 channels. There was not that much to watch. Now it's, have you watched pieces of her? Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you watched this?
Yeah. And yes, and that's on top of reading all the novels we need to read to keep abreast of the market, you know.
Exactly.
And that's not just ones that are out now, that's ones that are coming out in future, isn't it? And it's overwhelming.
It's looking at the galleys. I mean, I used to be very ahead on reading, and now I'm like a week ahead. I'm not reading something for June right now. I don't have time. It's just not working out like that to be able to do, you know, everything. But by the same token, when you're sitting and reading a book like yours, you're realizing the care that went into that pacing and thinking what's going on. And that probably, if we went back and read a book from 20 years ago, wouldn't have been necessary. It probably would have been too quick. Because if you think about even reading in cold blood, it was very measured. A lot didn't happen on a lot of pages.
It's true.
A lot. And now it's got to be like this. You've got to get the reader completely engaged at all times.
You do. And that's a struggle for me. I think that's something I tried out for the first time in Long Weekend, is really putting in that pace. And I found that as a writer, at first a little bit unnatural. I thought, am I overdoing it? Because my tendency is to write a little slower, but that's not what the market wants.
I just read the new Lisa Scottolini book, We Are the Brennans, and it's the same thing. It's very fast paced. It's the fastest paced I've read. But I think that that's what the market needs, because that's keeping up with the visual pace that we're used to right now. We're used to a much more rapid visual pace of what's happening. If you're watching a series like Reacher, if you're watching like, you know, Bosch, if you're watching anything like that, there's not a lot of dead time in those episodes. There's not a lot of downtime. And I think that that's the way people's lives are right now too, with their phone here and there and the other place.
Yeah, I think you're right. And everything's fighting for our attention. So it's got to fight with short chapters and action, and, you know, so you've got to really work hard to get the characterization and that kind of thing into the book as well as that.
And it's also, when you were a kid, you didn't have your own phone line, let alone like you earned your own phone line as a teenager. Like sometime they said, now you can have your own phone, like in your room. That was a big deal. And now you have your own phone in your pocket when you're like 9. And as a result, that I'm really more worried about, like the readers right now still grew up in the world that we grew up in, but the next generation coming up is used to all day long. TikTok videos at age 6, you know, it's like, you make them for me, you know, this is what I would like you to do. So was the title always The Long Weekend?
No, that was a process of discussion with the publishers and Helen and I. So we try and get one that's going to be the same in the US and UK. So sometimes that takes a while, but it's something we like to do because otherwise promotion becomes super difficult. We got there in the end. I think my UK editor suggested that, and everyone went, that's brilliant.
So it's 3 couples, 2 bodies, 1 secret. You know, here we go. Like, you built the tension up right from the beginning. There we go. So the cover, was this something that took a number of tries? Because I know the UK is different.
It took not too many tries, actually. When we first got it, it was very, very similar. I think we added some more of the thorny stuff to kind of to ramp up the intrigue. But they always had the ripped paper, which I absolutely love. And I'll show you the back of I've just got my finished copies, and they've carried that over onto the back.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
It's very cool. Yeah, I love it too.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, so I think it's a very beautiful book. It's one of the most beautiful books I've got. So I'm thrilled with it. I think it's stunning. Yeah.
You know, one of the interesting things is they didn't like to make black covers for years because they've got fingerprints on them. And that's one thing that's happened differently with even the indie stores shipping a lot and whatever, is you don't have to worry about fingerprints in the stores quite the same way.
Oh, I
How's
never
that
even
for
thought of that. Yeah.
intrigue, you know what I mean? There you go. Yeah, I remember being with Mitch Kaplan at Books and Books in Miami one time, and he goes, "Oh, black covers. That means you have to clean them off a lot because they'll be fingerprinted and
Of
people won't
course.
buy them." I
Of
thought that is
course.
so interesting. And I never thought about, if you look at your black books, like books with
Yeah.
big black covers, they get finger marks really easily.
Yeah, it's true.
Finger mark
Yeah.
them up. So the audiobook, did you select Olivia Poulet as the narrator?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I had a few narrators, and you usually get a choice of about three, and her voice sounded good to me.
It sounds like really
She did a
great.
terrific job. Yeah.
Are you an audiobook listener? Do you listen?
I am actually not. I probably should be, because it would help me listen to more. But I'm an ebook reader and a physical book reader, but I have never made that leap to audio. I don't know why.
I used to do it when I was in the car a lot more, but
Yeah.
now I can't have noise on when I write. Like, I'm not one of these people gonna have music on. I can't do. I remember hearing Laura Dave said she played the same song over and over. It was some Bruce
I do that a bit. Yeah.
all over and over. And yeah, there was a song a couple of weeks ago I got a little bit addicted to, and I was like hitting like back. But for the most part, it can't be anything I don't know, or anything like that. So the audiobook, though, there's something about it that I feel like authors need to pay attention to. And a lot of people started reading their books to themselves because it reads completely differently
Yes.
when you hear
Yes.
it. And they said you'll hear the same word, like, how did I use that word so many times? And it's
I've started to do that, and it is quite extraordinary how much you edit as soon as you do that.
you're reading aloud going, what did I just say? And why did I do that?
That sounds so awkward. Yeah.
Even sometimes I write the newsletter the next morning going, what was I talking about? And why did I put
Yeah.
that down there? And no, you didn't finish the sentence. Like, start there. It's like da. So in 18 months, what's next for you? Are you started, or where are you?
I'm started. I had a couple of false starts. I had a couple of characters. I'm not going to say too much because it's too early days, but I had a pair of characters who I absolutely love. They're a couple, and the book is built around them. And I did a couple of false starts, but now I have a book that's working really nicely. I've got it. So it's early days because I lost so much time, but I'm excited about it. So more news soon.
Well, there's been so many people talking do-over recently, and I think people are being more honest about that too, because it didn't seem to be a badge of success if you had to do it over. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was, why did you do that? And how did you not get that right the first time? And all those kinds of things. And I think that's kind of gone away right now, because I think people are admitting what's going on. I think the pandemic made people a lot more honest about a lot of things.
Yeah, I think you're right. And it's such a relief. It's nice to be able to say, and to say you failed and you tried again. And I hope that says something about how much authors care about the final product being good, because we could all probably tap something out that would be okay. But, I think for the vast majority of us, we want to do better than that. We care more than that.
Well, I remember Kristen Hanna told me she threw out 250 pages of her latest book. And all of a sudden she discovered the character of Elsa, and that became the character in the book. She didn't discover it until she wrote 250 pages that she then tossed. Lisa Scottolini on Eternal wrote 1,000 pages, and they said, you're probably going to come in at page 250. But you have that, you needed those first 250 to get yourself into the character or whatever. So it's not lost pages. It can become like, hey, a story I put up online of how I got to where I got to where, but
it's a lot of it's character development. I threw out 40,000 words in November and then another 20 in February. So it's it's 2/3 of a book. But I don't regret it, because I know these characters well now, and I can write them faster now.
And it is, and I think that we were all still more distracted than we thought to get a clear head, to be sitting and figuring out. I mean, when you're sitting here going into Christmas and like, oh, there's another variant. My son was going to fly to the UK at Christmas, and he's like, I would spend Christmas Day getting tested, so I think I'll skip this and I'll drive out west. And it was just so much just got tossed up in the air, and let's make changes and let's move around. And I really think that it made people think, though, of like, okay, where am I on this thing? Is this really good? Okay.
Yeah. And the concentration was different, and we all started to live differently, different people in the home, and habits changed. And there was so much that got thrown up in the air, and so much uncertainty. Absolutely.
But we always looked at, I mean, I always had an office here, but to now make this like, this is going to be my home office. This is what I'm going to be doing every single day. And then to move the 2,000 square foot office home with all those bookcases, and where we're going to put those on which walls in which house, like where are we going to do all this, became really interesting, because I think there was those times of you're starting over and you're starting fresh. And I was also, we were finally having dinner at 7:00 instead of like 7:45 or 8 o'clock.
Nice, Carol. It was that lovely.
It's like, but my husband and I get used to having us around, because he's worked out of the house for years. And now all of a sudden these people are here, who are these people and why are they in my house all day long? Oh my gosh, I usually don't see them until 7:30, quarter to 8.
That was me when all my family moved in. I was like, oh, I've just lost my home. I used to
exactly
hours to myself.
Well, we looked at my younger son at one point. We said, are you coming back? And he's like, no. And I was like, okay, your bedroom is now Greg's office. It was like, liberate. It's like, okay, you're really not coming home. We're really holding this space. He goes, no, I'm not moving back. I'm like, here we go. And it was, as one of my friends said, the best line was, thank God we didn't downsize. And I said,
yes, actually. Yeah. That's a very good point.
Because you move back into your room. There's your room. Go back in it,
Yeah.
So. Oh my gosh, it's been so pleasant. Let's make a pact that we're going to do this in between books. We're just going to call and chat. Can we do that?
That would be so nice, Carol. I would love that.
Because I feel like we don't do that. We never get to, yes, and at conferences you get to say hello and you get to like walk around with a drink for a little while, but it's still not the same thing as having those chit chats that I probably should have done more of in that first year,
It would be lovely. Let's do it.
We'll do it. Thank you so much for joining us. Such a pleasure to have you as always.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for terrifying our readers with this book. Thank you for terrifying them. Thank you for twisting their heads around. It's really great. And to our readers, look forward to seeing you next time on Book Reporter Talks To. Read the book. Don't forget, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode, or wherever you get podcasts. Just remember, Book Reporter Talks To. Thanks, everybody.